Your soulmate got emotional while thinking about you. What they want to tell you may surprise you. My beloved child. Your soulmate got emotional while thinking about you, but it wasn't simply because they missed you. Something happened in a quiet moment that brought your memory rushing back so strongly they couldn't push it away anymore. Maybe it was a familiar song, a place they passed, or one small detail that reminded them of a moment you shared. Whatever triggered it, their guards suddenly disappeared. They sat there thinking about the things they never said, the feelings they tried to control, and one particular truth they have been afraid to admit even to themselves. Their eyes filled because they realized something about you that they should have understood much sooner. And here's where it gets strange. Instead of trying to forget you again, they reached for their phone. They almost contacted you. Almost. But something stopped them before they could send the words they had been holding inside. What stopped them wasn't a lack of feeling. It was fear of what might happen once you finally knew the whole truth. Your soulmate has been replaying certain moments between you, especially the moments when you may have wondered why they became distant, quiet, or difficult to understand. From your side, that silence may have looked like indifference. But from theirs, something much more complicated was happening. They were trying to convince themselves they could control what they felt for you. They thought distance would make everything easier. Instead, every attempt to move forward seemed to expose how deeply your presence had affected them. And during this emotional moment, one question kept returning: what if I waited too long? Don't skip, because that question pushed them toward a realization they weren't prepared for. They began imagining you finally moving forward without them, and the thought didn't bring relief. It frightened them. Because suddenly, losing you was no longer an abstract possibility. That was when the emotion became impossible to hide. Your soulmate realized they don't just want another conversation with you. They want the chance to correct something. There is something they believe you misunderstood about their actions, and they've been carrying the weight of it quietly. They want you to know that one decision they made, the decision that may have hurt or confused you, was not made for the reason you probably assumed. There was another reason behind it, one they never explained because revealing it would have forced them to admit how vulnerable they had become around you. Now they're questioning whether silence protected anything at all. They have started forming the words they want to say, and one sentence keeps rising above everything else. It isn't simply, "I miss you." It isn't even, "I love you." What they want to tell you goes deeper, because it reveals what they were truly afraid of from the beginning, and once you hear that truth, you may finally understand why they couldn't stop thinking about you tonight. The truth they've been afraid to admit is that their deepest fear was never loving you too much, it was discovering that you mattered enough to change the future they had already planned. Your soulmate had convinced themselves they knew exactly what they wanted. Then you entered their thoughts in ways they couldn't predict. Suddenly, ordinary decisions carried your shadow. They imagined telling you something funny, wondered what you would think about their choices, and caught themselves comparing peaceful moments to the feeling they had around you. That realization scared them. So when their emotions became overwhelming, they pulled away instead of moving closer. But now they understand what that distance may have communicated to you. You might have believed you weren't important enough for them to stay. And realizing that possibility is exactly what brought tears to their eyes, because the truth was almost completely opposite. Then another memory surfaced, one they had tried very hard not to revisit. It was a moment when you gave them an opportunity to be honest, even if neither of you said it directly. They could have told you what was happening inside them. They could have admitted that their silence wasn't rejection. But they hesitated, and the moment passed. Now your soulmate keeps replaying it differently, imagining what might have happened if they had simply spoken. Would everything between you have changed? Would you have stayed closer? That question has begun following them everywhere. And tonight, something shifted. Instead of asking themselves how to forget you, they started asking how they could finally tell you the truth without making another mistake. Stay till the end, because what they decided next surprised even them. They began writing down exactly what they would say if they had one completely honest conversation with you. At first, the words came slowly. Then everything they had buried started pouring out. They wanted to tell you that you affected them more deeply than they ever allowed you to see. They wanted to apologize for every confusing silence and every moment when fear made them appear colder than they actually felt. But then they wrote something they hadn't planned to write, and they stopped. They stared at that sentence because it exposed the real reason they had become emotional while thinking about you. Your soulmate wasn't only grieving what happened between you. They were grieving the possibility that you might never know what they had secretly hoped could happen next. Because somewhere beneath all that hesitation, they had imagined a future involving you. And now there is one specific part of that future they desperately want to reveal, but saying it aloud would require them to make a decision they can no longer take back. That decision has been sitting quietly in their heart for longer than you realize. Your soulmate has imagined what it would feel like to stop hiding behind uncertainty and finally choose you openly, not through hints, silence, or half-finished conversations, but through actions you could actually trust. And this is what surprised them most during that emotional moment, when they pictured their future without fear controlling it. You were still there. They saw ordinary things. Morning conversations. Laughing over something ridiculous. Being able to tell you when something hurt instead of disappearing into silence. Those simple images affected them more than any dramatic fantasy could. Because suddenly they understood that what they wanted wasn't temporary excitement. They wanted peace with you. But one painful question immediately followed. After everything that has happened, would you even believe them if they finally said so? That question made them confront something uncomfortable. They know words alone may not be enough anymore. They remember the times you needed clarity and received confusion instead. They remember moments when they could have reassured you but chose silence because vulnerability frightened them. Now they're beginning to understand the cost of that choice. Your soulmate doesn't want to approach you with another beautiful promise and expect everything to magically disappear. They want to show you something different: consistency, honesty, the courage to remain present when emotions become difficult. And while thinking about this, they realized there is one apology you deserve that they have never properly given. Not simply, "I'm sorry I hurt you." Something far more specific. Something connected to the exact moment when they believe the distance between you truly began. And once they recognized that moment, another hidden truth surfaced with it. Because the distance may not have started for the reason you thought. Your soulmate remembers hearing something, one comment, one suggestion, one piece of information, that planted doubt at exactly the wrong time. Instead of coming directly to you and asking whether it was true, they allowed fear to fill in the missing pieces. That mistake influenced what happened afterward more than they wanted to admit. But now, looking back with clearer eyes, they're questioning whether what they heard was ever accurate in the first place. Something doesn't add up. The timing feels wrong. Certain details contradict what they personally knew about you. And tonight, while replaying everything, your soulmate noticed one detail they had overlooked completely. It could explain why they suddenly became distant, and why someone may have wanted them to misunderstand you from the very beginning. The overlooked detail was small, but once your soulmate noticed it, everything began to look different. The person who planted that doubt had spoken with unusual certainty about something only you should have been able to explain. At the time, your soulmate was already emotionally overwhelmed, so they accepted the story without asking the obvious question: how could this person possibly know what was in your heart? Now they can see how quickly fear took control. One assumption became another, and soon they were reacting to a version of you that may never have existed. That realization hit them hard. They remembered your expression during one particular conversation, the confusion in your voice, the way you seemed to be waiting for an explanation they never gave. For the first time, they wondered whether you had been standing there completely unaware of what they had been told. That thought changed the emotion inside them from sadness into regret. Your soulmate started mentally separating what they actually experienced with you from what someone else suggested they should believe. And the difference was impossible to ignore. Their own memories told them you cared. Their own experiences reminded them of moments when your actions spoke more clearly than rumors ever could. So why had they trusted fear instead? The answer embarrassed them, because believing the worst gave them an excuse to retreat before you had the chance to hurt them. But now they realize they may have created the very loss they were trying to avoid. Something huge is waiting for you, because this realization didn't simply make them emotional, it pushed them toward a choice. They no longer want another person's words controlling what happens between you. If they are going to learn the truth, they want to hear it directly from you. And that is where everything becomes more serious. Your soulmate began imagining that conversation, but instead of preparing accusations, they found themselves preparing an apology. They want to tell you exactly what they heard, exactly why it frightened them, and exactly how badly they handled it. Yet there is another confession buried underneath that apology. During the time they were distant, they kept checking for signs that you still cared. A familiar name appearing somewhere could change their entire mood. A memory could stop them in the middle of an ordinary day. And every time they tried convincing themselves they were finished with the connection, something inside them resisted. Now they finally understand why. But before they can tell you, they need to face one uncomfortable discovery, because the person who influenced their doubts may have had a reason for doing it, and your soulmate has just begun to understand what that reason could be. The reason became clearer when your soulmate remembered something that happened shortly before the distance began. The person who planted those doubts had noticed how differently your soulmate behaved whenever your name came up. They saw the smile that appeared before it could be hidden. They noticed how your soulmate defended you when others misunderstood you. And suddenly, an uncomfortable possibility emerged. Maybe that warning had never been about protecting them at all. Maybe someone had recognized how important you were becoming and felt threatened by the change. Your soulmate doesn't know every motive yet, and they refuse to make another assumption without proof. But one thing is undeniable. The story they were told no longer matches the person they personally experienced. And realizing they may have judged you through someone else's fear made the emotion return even stronger. This time, however, they didn't run from it. They opened the unfinished message again and began changing the words. The excuses disappeared first. Then the defensive explanations. What remained was painfully simple: I should have asked you. Your soulmate stared at that sentence because it carried the weight of everything they wish they had done differently. They should have asked what you meant. They should have listened before withdrawing. They should have trusted the connection enough to have one difficult conversation instead of allowing silence to answer questions you never even knew existed. But there was another sentence beneath it, one they almost deleted. Don't skip, because this was the moment their emotions shifted completely. They wrote, "If there is still a place for me in your life, I don't want to waste it anymore." And for once, they didn't erase those words. Still, they haven't sent the message yet, because your soulmate knows reopening this connection means accepting whatever truth comes back. You could welcome the conversation. You could need time. You could even tell them that their silence changed something permanently. That possibility frightens them, but not enough to make them hide forever. Something inside them has changed. They would rather hear an honest answer than continue living inside unanswered questions. And just when they thought they had finally understood why they became so emotional, another memory surfaced, one involving something you once said almost casually. At the time, they barely reacted. Tonight, they suddenly understood what you may have been trying to tell them. Now that single sentence has completely changed the message they are preparing for you, because your soulmate believes you might have revealed your true feelings long before either of you realized it. That forgotten sentence returned with startling clarity. You had said something simple about how real connections shouldn't require people to guess where they stand. At the time, your soulmate heard the words but didn't understand their weight. Tonight, they finally did. You may not have been asking for perfection. You may have been asking for honesty. And instead of giving you clarity, they gave you silence because they were terrified of revealing how deeply invested they had become. That realization changed the entire meaning of your past conversations. Suddenly, little moments they once dismissed began fitting together. Your patience. The questions you asked. The times you gave them room to speak without forcing anything. They now wonder whether you were quietly offering them chances to step closer while they kept stepping back. And one question is haunting them now: how many chances did they misunderstand before you finally stopped offering them? Your soulmate went back through the message again, but this time they added something they had never planned to confess. They admitted that your absence taught them what your presence had meant. Not because everything became dramatically empty overnight, but because ordinary life continued, and somehow felt different. Good news arrived, and they instinctively wanted to tell you. Difficult moments came, and your voice was the one they imagined hearing. They found themselves remembering details about you they hadn't deliberately memorized. That frightened them at first. Now it doesn't. What frightens them is allowing pride to steal more time. So they wrote another sentence: I don't expect you to forget what happened. I just want the chance to tell you what really happened inside me." Their finger hovered near the send button. Then something unexpected stopped them again, but this time, it wasn't fear. It was a realization about you. Your soulmate suddenly understood that this conversation cannot only be about what they need to confess. It also has to make room for everything you may have carried while they were silent. Your questions. Your disappointment. Maybe even anger they never allowed you to express. For the first time, they aren't preparing to defend themselves. They're preparing to listen. And that may be the biggest change of all. They want to ask what their distance did to you, then hear the answer without interrupting or escaping when it becomes uncomfortable. But there is still one thing they haven't written into that message. One truth so vulnerable that even admitting it privately made them emotional again. Because beneath the apology, beneath the misunderstanding, beneath every explanation, your soulmate has finally identified exactly what they want from you now. And it is far more serious than simply asking for another chance to talk. What they want now is not a temporary return to the way things used to be. Your soulmate has realized that going backward would only recreate the same uncertainty that separated you in the first place. They want something different, something honest enough that neither of you has to keep interpreting silence or wondering what the other person truly feels. That is the confession they struggled to write. If we ever try again, I want to do it differently. Those words frighten them because they carry responsibility. They mean showing up consistently. Speaking when something feels wrong. Asking questions instead of believing assumptions. And most importantly, giving you the freedom to decide whether their effort deserves your trust. Your soulmate finally understands that wanting you is not enough. If they want a meaningful place in your life, they have to become someone whose actions make that place feel safe. Then they did something they had avoided all night. They imagined you reading the message. Not the perfect version where you immediately understand everything, but the real version where you might hesitate. That possibility made their chest tighten, yet they didn't delete what they had written. Instead, they added the most vulnerable line so far. I was afraid you could become the person I couldn't imagine losing. Suddenly, everything made sense. Their distance. Their defensiveness. Their attempt to convince themselves that the connection wasn't serious. They weren't running because they felt nothing. They were running because the feeling had become powerful enough to expose parts of themselves they normally kept protected. Stay till the end, because recognizing this created another unexpected shift. Your soulmate stopped asking, "What if you reject me?" and started asking, "What if staying silent hurts us more than the truth ever could?" And that question brought them closer than ever to finally sending the message. But before doing it, they read everything one last time, and noticed something missing. They had explained their fear. They had admitted their mistakes. They had acknowledged what you might have endured. Yet they still hadn't told you the one thing that caused the emotion in the first place. So they added a final sentence, then froze when they saw it written clearly in front of them. When I imagine the life I truly want, somehow you are still there. No excuses followed it. No attempt to soften its meaning. Your soulmate simply stared at those words because they had finally admitted what they had spent so long avoiding. But now another decision stands between those words and you. They must choose whether to leave that confession hidden on a screen, or finally risk pressing send. And something that happened immediately afterward may have made that decision for them. Before they could decide, something unexpected appeared on their phone, a small reminder connected to you. Nothing dramatic. Just